Hey guys, so recently I was going through some of my older videos and I realized I never had a video talking about how to build a computer. And being this is a tech channel, it might be an interesting topic to go over. So, for those people that don't know how to build a computer, well, watch Linus Tech Tips. Bye. Alright, I'm joking. I will be teaching you how to build a computer in this video, but I'm not going to be breaking that down because I'm a coder and I believe that once you build it, you shouldn't mess with it again. So what I'm going to be doing though is using some older components I have as well as simple parts from this like the RAM, the GPU, stuff like that to show you how to build a computer. Just less chance of me breaking anything. Well, let's say that you're lucky and you get your computer parts. All of them are there ready to build, all in their boxes. But where do you start? Well, you start by having a clean desk, clutter free. But after that, you want to make sure that the workspace that you're working on is non-conductive. See, this is wood, which is non-conductive, but let's say you have a glass desk, or weirdly enough, a leather desk. You would want to make sure that you're placing your computer parts on a non-conductive material, like a mouse mat or the box that the motherboard came from. So the static electricity from that glass or that leather won't fry your motherboard and, well, no computer for you. Obviously mine's wood, as I said, so no static. So once you made sure you got the right material to work on so it's non-static, what you want to do is you get your power supply and preferably you want to plug it into the wall to make sure that it has power. And don't turn it on or anything. Make sure it's off. You don't want to shock yourself. Make sure it's off. Once you plug it in, you want to take your fingers and you just want to rub it on this for like a couple seconds. And basically what this does is supposedly it removes the static electricity from your fingers and stuff so you don't fry your computer because skin is a static conductor. And once you figure out that, you can start by placing your motherboard on the floor. So the thing with computer building is it's really self-intuitive. That's not the right word, but you can start anywhere and you can end anywhere, but there's a certain process that makes it the easiest. And obviously that process starts with the motherboard here. Now we could put the motherboard in the case, but then it becomes really hard to work with. So it's easier to just leave it on the table first. And once you do that, the easiest part to put in, obviously, I'm gonna let you guess first. I'm gonna give you a couple seconds. All right, that's enough. The easiest part to put in is the CPU. Now, for other people might say the RAM or the GPU. The problem is GPU too clunky, it makes it really hard to work with. And the RAM is a good option, it's super easy, but preferably you want to put your CPU and your cooler on so that when you put the RAM in, you can make sure you have enough space. Obviously, I like to start with the CPU because it's the hardest, and yeah, it's just the hardest part of computer building. Because, if you do mess it up, then you'll get something like this. Ugh, it's disgusting. Now, I don't know if you can see this on camera, but a lot of the pins, yeah, right there, a lot of the pins are bent on the CPU. So obviously, this CPU is not gonna work. And be realistic, it doesn't even fit in here, right? But hypothetically, if it did, you'd put it there and you'd close your mount. Now, let's say you have a Intel CPU, the pins are gonna be here. You just, again, place it on top, close it, and then same locking mechanism, really. Of course, you'll have a plate that goes over it. AMD doesn't. Well, newer AMD does, but the older AMD generation doesn't. And if you are going to work on it, make sure that, see the diamond on the CPU part, this diamond right here? Make sure that's aligned properly. You can see there's another triangle here, so you place it this way. And make sure it sits. You should feel it like drop in there. Of course, this isn't going to because it's the bent pins. But once it drops in there, you place the bar down or you place the kind of tab down if it's Intel. And that's how you put your CPU in. Of course, we're not going to be doing that. And I'm going to cut to my actual PC. So now that I have my PC, I took out some of the other components because I can just show you in here how to put it. You kind of see the CPU would be right here and you'd have your CPU fan on top of that. You'd screw it in real quick and then you'd plug in the CPU fan, which is right here. Take it out, plug it back in. And that's really simple. And if you didn't bend any of the pins, it should work fine. I'm going to ignore all of these wires real quick and show you the next easiest part, which is the RAM. Obviously, I have my Neo Trident right here. And this is, make sure, what you want to do is make sure that you have your pins aligned correctly. The slot right here, this is DDR4 RAM, so there's going to be a slot right here. You're going to see this part is a little shorter than this part. So you want to look at that. This part is longer than this part. And so you're going to put it like that. Put it in this slot, in both the slots, and then put it in both the slots. And then you want to push down until you hear that click where this locks, right? So basically what that is, you know, once you click, it locks, right? It's basic sense. And the reason I'm putting this in different spaces is, there's actually an important reason for this, is because when you're working with dual channel RAM, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, dual channel. What happens is your motherboard works best in a certain position. So putting them next to each other is like a simple common mistake that I see a lot of people do. But you're actually supposed to put it, like, generally it's like this one or these two. Generally, your motherboard manual will tell you how to make it in dual channel, but this allows your RAM to run faster and better. So put it in this. It allows it to run in dual channel. So you want to keep it certain space apart. Generally, it's 1 slot away. It depends on which, if it's 2 and 4 slot or the 1 and 3 slot. I put in 1 and 3 slot. I think that's my dual channel. I didn't check the motherboard manual, but yeah. Then after that, what you can do is, you know, put it in your case, put it in your case, and then I can show you separately how to put in the power supply. So now that we came back to my older motherboard and a power supply, it's also pretty old. I think it's like 250 megaamps or something. It's, I don't know, like 400 watts. So very old, probably won't work with anything, you know, in today's modifications. But what you want to do is you want to find a couple wires. This wire, this probably, generally it's like the biggest one. It's like 20 by 2, something like that. Something really big. It's one of a kind. You won't notice anything. This is going to be able to power this one's going to be able to power your motherboard, your RAM, and everything on it. So what you do is you plug it into this big slot. And you should hear a click. This one won't click because, again, it's old. But you should hear a click, and that means that you did it. And it should be like a light quick click. Then you see these 2x2s. These 2x2s are going to be your CPU power. Sometimes they'll have 2, sometimes it's 1. Generally it's 1. And it's going to be in this little 2x2 slot. Sometimes it's pretty close to the motherboard, you can notice. Sure your pins are right. Yeah, no, my pins are right. I did the wrong way. I was wrong. But after that, then, yeah, you got, that's your CPU power. All of these pins are going to be for your hard drive. They're SATA pins. And they're going to be all for your hard drive. This one's broke. But this is going to be hard drive to plug that in. Obviously, I don't have a hard drive I can show you. But it's pretty simple. This one's to power your hard drive. Then you have another small SATA cable that's going to come into here and plug into this. That's going to connect your motherboard with the hard drive. Then, before we end, then that's kind of empowering. Wiring is going to be a little different. It's different for every computer. I can show you the wiring for that one. And there is more power wires and stuff like that I'll show you with the actual one. But that's kind of the main powers that you'd have. Your motherboard and your CPU that you're going to be using with your power supply. So as I just showed how the power connections work, you can see it here where I have one cable here connecting into here, another power supply coming to here. Of course, this one is bigger at a 4. Sorry. But like I was saying, this is bigger at a 4x2, which kind of shows how, like I was saying, sometimes they use 2 of those 2x2s. Then the next power we have is, not power, sorry, but this is our SATA connector here, as I was talking about. Then we have some front I/O connectors. This is for USB. I think this is not for USB. This is for audio and stuff like that, I'm pretty sure. And then some other front I/O pins. These are the worst. And then obviously some other low pins here for front I/O, front I/O, not SSD, front I/O, hard drive, stuff like that. Now what we do is we're going to put it in our case first. Then after we put it in our case, what we can easily do is plug in our GPU. Now, this is where I'm going to pause real quick because let's say hypothetically you have an M.2. So mine's in this pin. I'm not going to get a screwdriver to open it because I don't want to. But generally, you just pop these screws open. It would be a little slot that you clip in. and then you would it would be a little slot that you clip in, and once you do it, you press it down, you put this screw on top, I put this latch on top, screw it down, and then screw the other side, and then you have your M.2 SSD. If not, I'll show you how to put the other type of SSD in later, in a minute. But first, we're gonna take our GPU and we're gonna plug it in to this thing. If I can get it right, yep, the slots, and then we just press down. And you hear that click, see right here, that means it clicked in, meaning we're good. So after you click it in, what you're gonna do is you're gonna get your thumbsticks, or thumb screws, my bad. And you should be able to see this, right? I think so. Yeah. Well, you're gonna put that in and you're gonna screw it down so it stays. Because you don't want your GPU falling out because it's extremely expensive. And by the way, this is a 2060. I bought it for a lot of money during the GPU crisis. And I'm so hurt because it's so much cheaper now. And a lot of the components are so much cheaper now. So I feel like I wasted my money. If I can get the screw in, sometimes, so we don't want to tighten it all at the first time. God damn it. So what happens when I tighten it all at the first time is it tightens too much, and so you won't get the gap that you need. So sometimes you just want to keep it a little loose. Put this one in. All right, so I finally got it back in place. So I'm just gonna screw everything in, make this tight, and then make this tight. You don't want to be too tight so it doesn't break anything, but also kind of tight. And now what we do is we take our other power supply, power point. This one has 2 for the harder GPUs, because some GPUs will use two 2x4 pins. This one only uses 1, luckily, because it's, you know, it's technically an older GPU. And I just plug that in, and then boom, we have a somewhat working computer. Obviously, it's not complete without the hard drive and the SSD. If you have the SATA SSD, I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. But other than that, we have our fans, screw in, you know, those are pretty basic, pretty understandable. Just screw them into the points that they have. There's going to be little holes here on the side, like little slits here that you can point in. And yeah, I have little points here. I'm going to show you how the backside looks so we can see how the wiring and hard drive is. So this next part, I'm going to have to like stand and hold it, so it's going to be harder because I only have one hand. But as you can see, it's a lot of wires, you know. Some of these are for the RGB on my fans. You need RGB. It's very important. Makes your computer run 10 times faster. But as you can see, I wasn't that big a fan of cable management, so I just threw it all in there. And generally, you can get to this back point. Mine's magnetic, like this. So it's like a magnet. Take the front panel off and then the magnet thing. Some people use screws. It really depends on your case. Mine's a magnet. And then you see down here, generally this is where it always is. This is the PSU, the power supply. So all the cables come here and I can route them through here, these holes that they give, and you know, tons of other wiring, some for IO, stuff like that. But the real thing I want to look at is, where is it? Down here, if you can see it, there's a hard drive. And this is like one of the hard drive slots they give. So it's really simple. You can see the SATA point right here, SATA point right there, and then the power point right here. This is the power SATA. This is the motherboard SATA. They're both called SATA, I'm pretty sure, so kind of weird. But let's say, hypothetically, if you want to put an SSD, they don't go in the same slots as the hard drive. The SSD, for this case, is going to be here. Of course, it's different for every case. Take it with a grain of salt. But you can put it in the back, the front, it just depends. But this is where you put the SSD. And it's the same thing. You put the same SATA clip and the same SATA power, and it'll work. Well, that's really the back and everything there. So let's get back to the video. So once you put in your CPU cooler, your GPU, your power for the GPU, your RAM, the power cables for all this, the fans, and put it in the case, and you're connected your hard drive or SSD, then you would have a complete computer. Yay! Now, before you can close your computer and just start running it, you have to plug in your wires. So we start with the power wire right there, and remember to keep your power switch off still, because we're plugging in wires. Actually, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna turn it on. After that, you're gonna plug in all the wires that you want. As you can see, it's on. It has power because you see the RGB. But one important thing that I want to state is this right here. This is the display port. It could be HDMI. Sometimes you'll see it right here, display port on your motherboard. You don't want to plug it into that. Now, the reason you don't want to is because that is for your CPU. If you do plug it into that, you'll get no output. You'll get really scared, and then you broke it. But in actuality, you didn't break anything. This is only used if your CPU has an onboard GPU, which for most people, it doesn't. What you want to put is, if you have a GPU, there'll be a display port right there that you want to plug it into. Plugging it into there allows your GPU to actually do its job. And yeah, so don't make that mistake. And now we're gonna check if it boots. And we're gonna, woo! Return and waiting. Let's give it a minute to load. You can see it's booting. So now we have, yep, it's booting. So it works. Isn't that sick? Yay, congratulations. You built a PC. Now, obviously, this guide is very simplistic in a way. It doesn't go into some of the deeper parts that I would like to go to if I had the, equipment to do so. I would recommend watching multiple, build guides if this is your first time ever dealing with electronics or computers at all. I would watch multiple guides. Again, like I said in the beginning, watching Linus Tech Tips really is helpful. He does go really in depth into it, and it helps a lot with different situations. Of course, like in my situation, I didn't talk much about AIOs. Of course, those are also pretty intuitive. You plug it in where the fan is, and you route it so the tube. Put the radiator at where you want in the front if you want it to be an intake, or in the back if you want it to be an outtake. That gets to my point of fan placement. As you can see, my fans are facing inwards. That's basically saying that these fans are going to be pushing air out of it. These fans up front, you want them to be pushing air into your PC. So that's another mistake that some people make, is they put all of them as intakes or all of them as outtakes, which is not good. Generally, you want the front of your computer to be like intakes taking in fan, and generally your fans will say this, like the logo is going to be where it intakes from, and all of the rest of my fans are outtakes. You want to push the hot air out of your computer. And so generally just so simple rule is, if in the front, logo out. If in your computer, logo still goes out. Yeah. But you want to make it facing you. That's better. Yeah. Good job. Peace.